Hi everyone, my name is Ellen Wang and I am your writing coach and instructor. Today, I will be giving my masterclass on how to write high school academic essays and personal narratives. Let's get started. So, first of all, introducing myself a little bit. I am a recent graduate of Northwood High School heading on to USC. I had a 4.3 high school GPA and took all of the advanced English courses at Northwood, such as Honors European Literature and AP Literature, earning A's. And so, since I am a recent graduate, I know firsthand all about high school advanced English writing, and I also know the struggles that students go through, so I can totally relate to you, and I'll be able to break things down in a simple way that still allows you to succeed in advanced classes. Next, I'm also an award-winning writer. I've won 4 times awards from the Scholastic Writing Contest for a variety of different categories, such as short story and personal narrative. And then lastly, I'm a published researcher and a winning speaker of Toastmasters, which is an international public speaking organization. Writing and public speaking are both my passion, and I really want to share the ability to communicate ideas effectively over writing with students. Before we get into the technical parts of writing, let's talk about why writing matters. First of all, it's crucial for developing critical thinking. Writing's not just about putting words on the page, it's also about how to go through a line of reasoning and how to communicate your logic effectively to other people. And second of all, it's about communication. Your success in life is largely dependent on your ability to speak, ability to write, and the quality of your ideas. That was a quote by an MIT professor. And it shows that no matter what career you want to go into, the ability to communicate your ideas with others effectively is crucial, which is what writing develops. Next, academic success. If you want to be a successful student and get into a top-ranked university, then taking advanced English classes during high school will be crucial and very helpful to the goals that you want to achieve. And developing writing skills early can help you get a head start and not be as stressed out, especially if humanities is not your forte currently. And lastly, college admissions. Writing very moving personal essays is a huge part of the college application process. A lot of universities, for example, Stanford, count essays as at least 30% of the weighing factor of how they decide to admit students, and knowing how to write effectively gives you a huge advantage. So these are all of the benefits of being an excellent writer, and I hope that you'll stay with me as we go through how to be a good writer for academic essays and personal narratives. First, let's jump right into academic essays. So, in an academic essay, there are 3 components: the thesis statement, evidence, and commentary. Now, let's go into the details for each. So, your thesis is a clear, focused statement that tells the reader your viewpoint or your argument, and it's composed of 3 parts: subject, argument, and focus. And note here for argument, I said it's your viewpoint. It cannot be a summary. So, I'll share about that with an example on the next slide, but essentially, you can't just summarize the events that are explicitly stated in the book. You have to get out a universal meaning from your analysis based on the events of the book or the prose passage. And the thesis is usually in the introduction paragraph. It's put in the front so that the reader has an idea of the main points and the roadmap of your entire essay once they start reading it. So let's go through a bad and good example of a thesis. First, the bad example. In Pride and Prejudice, Lydia elopes with Wickham, causing shame for the Bennet family, while Elizabeth and Darcy have a loving relationship. While this sounds pretty legitimate on first glance, it actually does not have any argument at all. The events that are in this thesis are already written in the book, and there's no analysis of a universal message or meaning that's applicable to other situations or aspects of life. This writer is not putting in any sort of viewpoint. These are the facts of the book, and it's not disputable. So there's nothing to argue about. And this thesis would fail in a AP literature essay or other types of essays. Now let's take a look at the good example. In Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen contrasts Elizabeth and Darcy's relationship to Wickham and Lydia's relationship, demonstrating that the pursuit of selfish needs like vanity or fortune results in a superficial relationship, while selfless love overcomes the initial character flaws of both partners, causing moral enlightenment, character growth, and long-term emotional fulfillment. So the blue highlighted part is the argument. You can tell that it's not any specific event from the book, but it's kind of a moral lesson that's applicable to other parts of life. And not all thesis statements have to have morality as the topic of the argument, but as you can tell, it's my own viewpoint that I'm putting into the thesis, and it's not just the red part is the evidence or the focus, and that part is a summary of what happened in the book, but that's used to support the blue part, the argument, not to stand alone. So, as you can tell in summary, a bad thesis does not have an argument or an overall meaning or purpose of the author writing the book that applies to other parts of life, but a good thesis does have that. Next, evidence. Your evidence is used to prove your thesis slash argument. If you only have a thesis, then it's your own opinion and it can't stand. But if you have textual evidence from the book, article, or research to support your argument, then you gain credibility and you prove that it's true. So for evidence, you cannot pick something that's too obvious. If your evidence is the sky is blue, for example, then you don't have much else to say because the evidence already says everything. So you want to pick something that's more indirect and that leaves you room for deeper analysis using literary devices such as metaphor, tone, diction, or using context of the book. So that sounds a little abstract. Let's dive into an example to take a look. First, the bad. Elizabeth was offended by Darcy at the dance, which shows that they are both flawed people needing to reconcile later on. So, this example has no quote. There's no specific words from the book that the writer is showing. And as a result of that, there's not much to analyze later in the commentary. And it's also very vague. There are words like Elizabeth was offended, while it doesn't specify why she was offended. And it says that they're also both flawed people needing to reconcile, but it doesn't specify what the flaw is or demonstrate what the flaw is. So this is very vague. You can't really support your thesis using it. Next, let's look at the good. When the reserved Darcy was invited by Bingley to dance with Elizabeth, who was sitting without a partner, Darcy refused with the excuse that she wasn't handsome enough to tempt him, which caused Elizabeth to later remark, resentfully, that she could easily forgive his pride had he not mortified her own. In this piece of evidence, there's very specific words and quotes, such as tempt him, resentfully, and mortified. And these specific words give you space to analyze later on in the commentary. For example, you can talk about the connotations of tempt, the connotations of forgive his pride and mortified, creating deeper analysis and meaning. Also, there's a smooth quote integration. The author doesn't just plop down the quote, but instead uses the sentence to integrate the quote smoothly and make it very logical and coherent. Lastly, it's indirect. It doesn't say that Darcy is stubborn or Elizabeth has an ego. Instead, it shows what they've done, which gives you the space to, again, analyze later on, which brings us to our commentary. So commentary, think of it as a bridge between your thesis and your evidence, and explain why your evidence connects to your thesis. As we mentioned before, evidence is often not, the best evidence is not obvious. It doesn't say everything by itself. So that's why you use the commentary to go deeper into the evidence and connect it to your thesis. You explain context and literary devices such as metaphor, diction, and tone. For those who are not sure, metaphor is essentially comparing one thing to another, like she is an angel. She's not technically or actually an angel, but you're just saying that she's an angel to express that she's a kind person or very nice. Diction is analyzing the specific type of words that are used. For example, tempting diction, aggressive diction, etc. And tone is the overall vibe of what the author is saying. So, do they have an angry tone? Do they have a lamenting tone? And so you analyze all of these literary devices to create analysis. And then lastly, you want to explain tension, complexity, and multiple layers of meaning. In high school English, if you want to get A's in advanced classes, then you really have to dive beyond the obvious and show your depth of thought and your ability to see the multiple layers. We'll go into that in a little bit. So, an example. Let's go to the good first. Darcy's stubborn diction of tempt reveals that, unlike the sociable Bingley who danced with nearly every girl no matter their appearance, it took something unusually attractive in a girl to lure him outside of his comfort zone. This indirectly characterizes Darcy as reserved, complacent in his social discomfort, and self-absorbed, since he is too overwhelmed by his discomfort with social expectations to consider his remarks potential offense. In context, balls are formal social gatherings where young men and women are expected to get to know potential partners. For shy introverts like Darcy, this norm draws out stress and social anxiety, making them behave in rude ways inconsistent to their civil character. There are multiple things that are great about this commentary. First of all, it uses very specific words to create analysis. As you can see, the first blue highlight is stubborn diction of tempt. And that was a word from the evidence. Second of all, it analyzes the context. So in context, balls are formal social gatherings. Context is all about where is the place, what is the setting that the scene is occurring, and how does that influence how the characters behave, or how is meaning created through that. And third of all, we analyze characterization indirectly using Darcy's actions to create an interpretation of his personality and character. In the bad commentary, on the other hand, Darcy says that he wasn't tempted to dance with Elizabeth, which shows that he didn't really want to. This means he didn't think she was special or interesting at the time. He probably didn't like going to parties and didn't feel like talking to new people. There's no academic language here. It's very casual, so it's not appropriate for the type of essays you're going to write. And there's also no complexity, whereas the good commentary talked about social norms, talked about the pressure that Darcy might have felt as an introvert. This one stays very, very superficial and just takes note of Darcy's surface behavior without explaining the reason behind it. And lastly, it's vague. It doesn't use or analyze specific words from the evidence. So, in Express Academy, which is the 2-week summer camp that I will be hosting for middle and high school students, we will teach you how to write an excellent academic essay. You'll turn in your week first draft, no worries at all. I will help you. Edit it, revise, clarify your logic, as well as strengthen your thesis, evidence, and commentary through personalized feedback. And throughout the process of creating a polished essay, you will develop critical thinking and be able to make your own judgments better and better. So at the end, you'll have a polished academic essay that you can use for future program applications and also use as just a reference when you're writing your future essays. Now, let's transition to personal narratives. So why do personal narratives matter? Although they're less common in high school English classes, they are an essential skill for writing successful college admissions essays. So, your college admissions essay is essentially telling a story about yourself, reflecting upon your own growth as a person, and personal narratives do exactly that. It is the same type of essay, and you can transfer the skills you develop here directly into the college essays. Also, for self-discovery, writing allows you to process your thoughts and emotions and develop emotional maturity. And last of all, you learn to connect with readers and other people through shared experiences and through documenting your own vulnerability, which helps you communicate more effectively with others. There are three basic components of a personal narrative: emotion, which is the feelings that you have; reflection, which is the meaning and the lessons that you learn from the experience; and sensory details, which are sights, sounds, and smells that bring the scene to life and help the reader be in the same picture that you have in your mind. So the structure of most personal narratives go like this. You have a compelling opening action. You start in the middle of a scene or there's something important happening or with a hook, which is a surprising statement, which draws the reader in immediately and interests them to keep reading. And then you have rising tension. So that is when things continue to happen. There's more and more conflict. There are internal and external obstacles that create emotional struggle. And then emotional core. You reveal vulnerable feelings, express how events affected you through specific sensory details. So throughout the rising action, you don't just want to talk about the things outside that are happening. You also want to be very, very connected with how you are feeling. And in order to get into feelings, you might talk about physical sensations, such as there were butterflies in my gut, my palms are sweating. And then lastly, reflection and resolution. Most personal narratives end with the reflection of what lessons or insights that the writer gained. And this allows the readers to reflect on their own experiences and connect to the author. So let's take a look at one of my favorite personal narratives. It's very short. It's by Asian American author Amy Tan. I'll read it out loud for you. I fell in love with the minister's son the winter I turned 14. He was not Chinese, but as white as Mary in the manger. For Christmas, I prayed for this blonde-haired boy, Robert, and a slim new American nose. When I found out that my parents had invited the minister's family over for Christmas Eve dinner, I cried. What would Robert think of our shabby Chinese Christmas? What would he think of our noisy Chinese relatives who lacked proper American manners? What terrible disappointment would he feel upon seeing not a roasted turkey and sweet potatoes, but Chinese food? On Christmas Eve, I saw that my mother had outdone herself in creating a strange menu. She was pulling black veins out of the backs of fleshy prawns. The kitchen was littered with appalling mounds of raw food, a slimy rock cod with bulging eyes that pleaded not to be thrown into a pan of hot oil, tofu which looked like stacked wedges of rubbery white sponges, a bowl soaking dried fungus back to life, a plate of squid, their backs crisscrossed with knife markings so they resembled bicycle tires. And then they arrived. The minister's family and all my relatives in a clamor of doorbells and rumpled Christmas packages. Robert grunted hello, and I pretended he was not worthy of existence. Dinner threw me deeper into despair. My relatives licked the ends of their chopsticks and reached across the table, dipping them into the dozens or so plates of food. Robert and his family waited patiently for platters to be passed to them. My relatives murmured with pleasure when my mother brought out the whole steamed fish. Robert grimaced. Then my father poked his chopsticks just below the fisheye and plucked out the soft meat. Amy, your favorite, he said, offering me the tender fish cheek. I wanted to disappear. At the end of the meal, my father leaned back and belched loudly, thanking my mother for her fine cooking. It's a polite Chinese custom to show you're satisfied, explained my father to our astonished guests. Robert was looking down at his plate with a reddened face. The minister managed to muster up a quiet burp. I was stunned into silence for the rest of the night. After everyone had gone, my mother said to me, "You want to be the same as American girls on the outside." She handed me an early gift. It was a miniskirt in beige tweed. But inside, you must always be Chinese. You must always be proud you are different. Your only shame is to have shame. And even though I didn't agree with her then, I knew that she understood how much I had suffered during the evening's dinner. It wasn't until many years later, long after I had gotten over my crush on Robert, that I was able to fully appreciate her lesson and the true purpose behind our particular menu. For Christmas Eve that year, she had chosen all my favorite foods. Wow, take a moment to reflect on that. Taste it again, savor it. What made that memoir moving or meaningful to you? And feel free to pause here if you want to take a few minutes to jot down some ideas for sensory details, emotion, and reflection. Moving on. Let's go over some of the examples for sensory detail. A slimy rock cod with bulging eyes that pleaded not to be thrown into a pan of hot oil. Tofu, plate of squid, backs crisscrossed. As you can see here, the description of the food is very visceral and it's visual, and you can totally see it in front of your eyes just by reading those words. And by effectively having that sensory detail, Amy Tan pulls you into the scene and helps you feel some of the dread and emotion that she's going to. As you can tell, there's a very disgusted diction in here, a disgusted tone and connotation. For example, slimy, bulging eyes, stacked wedges, bicycle tires. Instead of this shows that the author is not just describing the food in an objective manner, but in a very subjective manner. Some people seeing the same exact food might think it's totally delicious. And if you thought it was delicious, you would write about it in a totally different way with a positive and delicious connotation. However, as you can see here, sensory details can incorporate the author's tone and get across that emotion very, very effectively. Next, emotion. This is directly talking about how the author felt in the moment, such as, when I found out that my parents had invited the minister's family over for Christmas Eve dinner, I cried. What would Robert think of our shabby Chinese Christmas? And then dinner threw me deeper into despair. I wanted to disappear. I was stunned into silence for the rest of the night. So these are direct emotions that the author is experiencing. And by having that, the author creates vulnerability. Vulnerability is showing personal weakness, and by doing that, you pull the reader closer to you, and there's a sense of intimacy and connection. Lastly, as you can tell, the memoir ended with reflection. So this is Amy Tan talking about what her mother said to her about the only shame is to have shame, and then how she later finally understood the purpose of the menu. So this usually is mostly at the end of the memoir, and it shows the personal growth that you experienced. Without this, personal narratives wouldn't be the same at all, and this is a very, very crucial part. So that is essentially the basics of academic writing and personal essay. In the 2-week summer camp that we're hosting called Express Academy, we will be going over these in more detail and depth. So you'll learn to master thesis development, evidence selection, and commentary depth by dissecting model essays as well as writing by yourself in week 1. In week 2, you'll learn personal narratives and you'll craft stories under the guidance of um, under my own personal guidance, and you will learn how to revise a bland, dull essay into a vivid essay with sensory details, authentic emotions, and meaningful reflections. By the end of the program, you will be transformed. You will not only have a polished 2-piece portfolio, but as a writer, you'll gain so much confidence, skill, and critical thinking. You'll feel much more ready to tackle the writing of the upcoming school year. So some of the things that we offer in Express Academy, which makes us stand out, is daily advanced techniques. Every day we'll have a short lesson that teaches writing strategies, and we'll immediately have short bite-sized exercises where you can practice using those techniques and get feedback on whether you use them effectively. Second of all, we have example dissections. We will look over more masterful essays like Amy Tan's Fish Cheeks, and we'll break them down so that you not only will think that they're great upon first impression, but you will know exactly, like an insider, what the techniques they're using are, which makes it so moving. Third, you'll have one-on-one feedback sessions. Every 2-hour session, I will be going into breakout rooms to provide each student personalized feedback, read over their essays, and make sure that they're on track for the growth. And lastly, I'll provide brainstorming support. So when you have a writer's block, you can't think of what to put down, you're staring at a blank page, don't worry, I'm coming here to the rescue. I will help you unlock your creativity through brainstorming techniques and bring out a writer in yourself that you previously didn't even know existed. So registration for Express Academy has an early bird discount before July 1st. The 2-week program is from July 28th to August 8th, every Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific time zone. The class size will be very, very small. It's over Zoom and we'll have less than 10 students, so you will be sure to receive personalized feedback from me. And lastly, register now. Feel free to scan the QR code or visit our website. Thank you everyone for attending this masterclass. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions and have a good rest of your day.